please. Mrs. Hopper.
Henry Jones.
Here.
Margaret Brown.
Here.
Rob Fechner.
Good morning.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Present.
Lisa Middleton.
Present.
David Miller.
Here.
Stacy Oliveris. Mr. President, I don't see Stacy on yet.
She had sent a note that she may have to go off at a certain time, so she's excused until she can come back.
Okay, thank you. Irena Ortega.
Here.
Jason Perez.
Here.
Ramon Rubacava.
Here.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Present.
Lynn Packman for Betty Yee.
Here.
Mr. President, all's in attendance.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. The next, there's no need for a closed session, so we go on to the item number 2 on the open session agenda. Approval of the November 18th timed agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Moved by Ms. Brown, second by Mr. Fechner. Mrs. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown.
Aye.
Rob Fechner.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris.
Excused.
Aye.
Oh, she's back. Okay.
Irena Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Aye.
Lynn Packman for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Margaret Brown making the motion, Rob Fechner seconded it, to approve item number 2, approval of the timed agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 1 week ago, our nation celebrated a very special day, Veterans Day. It is a time that Americans honor all those who have served or are currently serving in our armed forces, and those who currently serve in a reserve status. Today, we want to continue the celebration and honor the veterans that are part of the CalPERS team, our members, employers, and stakeholders. I'd like to welcome Jeffrey Scott from our San Diego Regional Office. Mr. Scott served in the Navy for 4 years as a member of SEAL Team 1. We are honored to have him here virtually to lead us in our pledge today. Mr. Jeffrey Scott, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jeffrey.
All right, thank you.
And I want to thank all veterans for their service to our country. We are grateful for your dedication, sacrifice, and courage. At this time, I want to give our members, employers, and stakeholders a preview of the January meetings. For the second year, the board will have a day of education, with the second day devoted to the annual stakeholders forum. The education day will be held on January 19th and will cover a number of topics. These will include refresher training on Bagley-Keene, the Political Reform Act and Government Code Section 1090, and fiduciary duties. We will also be briefed about the process our health plans use to set administrative expenses and establish reserve balances, as well as the process that management uses to recommend the board adopt administrative decisions as presidential. The next day, we'll host our stakeholders forum. We will have 4 75-minute presentations on the life cycle of a CalPERS member, our priorities in healthcare, and our upcoming asset liability management process. I strongly encourage our stakeholders to attend the forum. Today is our last meeting in 2020. It has certainly been a challenging year, to say the least. I want to thank my fellow board members for their patience and flexibility as we navigated the COVID environment. And of course, a tremendous thanks goes out to the CalPERS team for the seamless service they have provided our members and employers during this time. On behalf of the board, I want to wish everyone a very safe and healthy holiday season. So let's hope for a good and prosperous year in 2021. Thank you very much. With that, I would call on Ms. Frost for her report.
Great. Thank you, President Jones, and good morning, board members. I wanted to start with an update related to COVID-19 and our ongoing response to the pandemic. Throughout the year, really our top priority has been both to keep serving our members at the high levels of service that we did prior to COVID-19, but as well as to keep our employees and our stakeholders safe. We've continued our day-to-day business environment with roughly 85% of our team members working remotely. And then our focus does remain on serving our customers while we know that our employees are balancing many other priorities in their own households right now. Our core processes do continue to perform quite well. Anthony Sweeney did report out in his executive report during PHBC, but just to recap a few of the primary core process performance. Benefit payment timeliness is exceeding its target of 95%, with its average between January and October of this year being at 97%. And then our overall customer satisfaction rating also remained above the target of 90, coming in averaging around 92%. And then also during the terrible fires again this year in California, we were quick to respond to reassure all of the local retirees who were living in those impacted areas that they would continue to receive their benefit payments, whether those payments needed to be redirected or if we could get those individuals, those retirees set up for automatic deposit. So turning now to the recruitment of our next Chief Investment Officer, we are continuing with that process and our goal to have someone in place early next year. Interviews will begin the first week of December. Meanwhile, I want to take a quick moment to welcome Sterling Gunn to our investment team. Sterling is the new Managing Investment Director over the Trust Level Portfolio Program, and he was a part of a couple of the Monday investment committee panels. He brings a wealth of experience to CalPERS, and we feel very fortunate that we were able to recruit him. It took us a little bit of time to get him over the Canada-US border, but he's here now. And you'll be hearing quite a bit from Sterling over the course of the year with all of the asset liability management agenda items coming to the investment committee. Sterling is replacing Eric Baggeson, who is retiring after more than 16 years at CalPERS. I think many of you know Eric well. Eric Baggeson is retiring after, spending many moments here at CalPERS helping the team. He served in a variety of roles here with us during his 16 years. And so on behalf of all of us here at CalPERS, the board, as well as management and employees, I do want to thank him for his service to our members, our 2 million members, and to the entire team in the investment office. We wish him a lot of happiness in his retirement. I know that he and his wife did buy and essentially reconstruct a new home, so this will give him some time to enjoy that. I also want to take just a moment to recognize and congratulate Ann Simpson on her permanent appointment as the Managing Investment Director of Board Governance and Sustainability. Turning to health, you heard some very important discussions over the past couple of days about long-term care, as well as potential design and benefit changes to the health plans. The health plan changes that both Don Moulds and Marta Green brought to you are, really quite innovative and could potentially, more likely than not, benefit many of our members and help us continue to provide those high-quality plans while also looking at ongoing cost containment. As far as long-term care, we know that these choices are quite difficult. We're doing everything we can, possibly can, to minimize and mitigate their impact for the participants in the long-term care program. We will continue to explore more options, bring those back to the committee and to the board that would do one of two things: strengthen the program and, again, aid many of the policyholders. Yesterday, also, the Pension and Health Benefits Committee adopted a portfolio rating strategy for the HMO and PPO plans that we do believe will set us on a better path for rate parity amongst all of the plans. The portfolio may present some volatility at the outset. However, after the initial ramp-up period, members will experience more premium rate stability over the long term. In the Finance and Admin Committee, you were presented with the mid-year budget adjustments that represent our ongoing efforts to control our operational costs. The mid-year budget shows that we've reduced expenses by about 12% for the fiscal year. You were also presented with the financial statements that, once approved today, will be published in our comprehensive annual financial report, or also known as the CAFR, in December. And then finally, the most recent funding levels and risk report that was presented by our actuaries shows a slight increase to our funded status. And we know that this will be of interest to our employers, and we also would like to encourage them to continue to use that pension outlook tool that was developed internally between our IT organization and the actuaries, so that the employers can run their own cost scenarios for their agencies. And of course, if they have any questions with any of those results, they should contact their actuary. Every one of our employers has an assigned specific actuary. And then, as far as recent engagement, all of these obviously have been conducted in a virtual manner. The first one is the Diversity Investment Exchange. This was done in October. There were quite a number of opportunities for CalPERS to participate. This was a first-time event directed at leaders in the investment industry. And I think that really the goal of this event was to raise awareness about how to advance diversity and inclusion practices in these organizations. Interestingly enough, the other person on this panel with me was Andrew Junkin, which was the board's former consultant, who's now the Chief Investment Officer for the Rhode Island pension system. So this was a fireside chat format, and it was good to catch up with Andrew as well. And then I also had the honor to participate on a panel that was moderated by Hiro Mizuno, which many of you know. We brought Hiro to the board for some presentations and some insight into work that he had done while he was at GPIF. This was the annual Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. This is a summit that's hosted in Japan. And again, the focus of this discussion was more related to the coronavirus and its impact on sustainable investment practices and business operations for publicly traded companies. I think it's important to note that Japan has the largest number of TCFD reporting companies worldwide. Almost a quarter of all of the reports come from Japanese companies. And I was able to share some of the highlights of our own TCFD report, which Ann Simpson was able to present to you, and then talked more about our work with Climate Action 100+. That was followed by participation in Canada's International Economic Forum of the Americas, also known as the Toronto Global Forum. And that's also an annual event with a mission to really just foster discussion among economic leaders around the world. My session was more focused on the investor's role in economic recovery, and more specifically, our approach to long-term sustainable investing strategies. So as you know, with the end of our 5-year strategic plan coming to a close here pretty quickly, we have been working with our stakeholder relations team and the enterprise strategy and performance team to actively solicit feedback for that next 5-year strategic plan. So to date, we've connected with more than 40 stakeholder leaders representing 25 organizations, just to get their input on, the areas that they think that CalPERS does well, any opportunities or areas for improvement, what do they see as the external threat landscape, and then also additional potential partnerships that we might be able to form with them. The team has taken a very thorough approach to contact a wide variety of stakeholder groups, including member associations, retiree groups, employer associations, industry associations, legislative staff, consultants, and leaders also in the private business sector, all, I think, who have given us some unique perspectives that we haven't brought into this process in the past. For the most part, the majority view CalPERS as being effective at our core obligation to pay pension benefits and to administer the health plans. But there's also a shared desire to see us focus on achieving our targeted rate of return to fund pension payments. And I think those thoughts did vary across those groups that I mentioned. The key takeaway from the conversations is that, really the stakeholder community is clear about the importance of the health of the portfolio, our ability to hit that assumed rate of return target, to minimize as many costs as we can to the employer and prospectively to the member as well. And then finally, I'll end our outreach summary with the numbers and feedback received from our first ever educational forum. As you recall, the forum took place online in mid-October. Of the 2,600 attendees who had originally registered, we had about 1,600 who ended up actively participating for the two-day event. I think based on some of the industry standards that we've been able to gather, we did expect about a 50% drop in actual attendees. So our numbers are a little bit above that standard. In addition, I think the event proved effective in recruiting more individual agencies than what we've been able to see in the past. While we typically get participation from about 400 individual agencies, the online forum was able to increase that number to about 780, which is about a 90% increase over last year. And then of those 780 agencies, 236, this was the first time that they had ever attended one of these educational events. So certainly the more agencies that we can reach to help support them in their CalPERS roles, the better. And then in our post-event survey, attendees provided positive reviews of the forum and educational sessions overall. If you'd like to see those numbers, I'd be happy to share those with you as well. And then for those attendees who are watching and who registered, the presentations that were done over that 2 days will remain available through the Attendee Hub through mid-February. Now quickly over to the Spotlight on Excellence Award. Of course, one of the highlights of the forum every year is our annual Spotlight on Excellence Award presentation. This award honors outstanding public service and is a peer-nominated award coming from CalPERS's contracting agencies. This year's recipient, which is Trieste Huey from the Fontana Unified School District. So we'd like to actually show her story right now in this video. If we could roll that, please.
Fontana is the largest city in San Bernardino County. We're about 50 miles east of Los Angeles. I'm the food service director here at Fontana Unified. Fontana Unified has a little under 37,000 students enrolled. We have 270 very hardworking, caring food service employees. We try to serve a variety of foods that they all meet very strict federal regulations.
Trieste has always demonstrated an ethical character, resiliency. To me, that's very important, and I know it's something that is very important to the district. She's somebody that gets involved in the groundwork, and you have to be able to get down and dirty to be able to be involved.
The bottom line for her goals are that she needs to make sure that these children are taken care of, that they receive nutritious meals.
I wanted to be a teacher initially, and when I was in college, they were laying off teachers and I was afraid I wouldn't get a job. During college, I would substitute as a food service worker at a middle school. At the time, we were serving bags of chips with nacho cheese and soda for lunch. And it was that point that I just thought, I think we can do better. And instead of complaining about it, I think, you should do something about it. And so I went back to school for a master's degree in nutrition and decided that this was the path that I wanted to take to really try to make a difference. I hear the stories of some of the challenges that our community faces or very specific households are facing. And I feel like there's some action I can take to improve it. I feel like that's what I'm here for. And so even if it's just a tiny little thing to make sure that they have lunch while they're at school, I feel good about it.
During the pandemic shutdown, we had a situation, of course, where Our schools were closed. We have students in the community that rely on the school in order to receive their meals. And so Trieste was instrumental in making sure that that service ran smoothly, unbroken.
The problem was, presented to her, and she's very good at acting. Okay, let's get this done. I don't have a lot of time to, start this process. She came up with a solution pretty quick and got a lot of people involved.
So we have an amazing team behind us, as you can see, and they prepare approximately 400 meals for our families and community members, and they prepare fruits and vegetables and dry meals and frozen meals. She encouraged all of us to reach out to our community and just to make sure that kids were being fed, and I think that's been her #1 goal.
We have 45 school sites in the school district. For her to go out and be able to put together a staff like this at all of these schools, and to go to each one of these schools and see all of these people that are working alongside each other to put a smile on their face every day, I mean, they deserve it all.
It's really smooth process, so we just drive through and they give us all we need and we go.
I'm really thankful for everything that they do. Sure, everyone else really appreciates everything they do also. And I want to thank everybody for doing it.
She motivated her staff. She encouraged them so they felt good being on the front line.
They have been out there every single day. They've put themselves literally on the front lines of our schools. And I absolutely felt the entire time that they are first responders, and still feel that way, that they're out there every day interacting with the community, having to work with each other, not knowing possibly where their peer, their coworker next to them has been, or how much risk they have put themselves in working with them. This has been the largest feeding effort in American history, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
As a director, sometimes people feel like they are above certain duties. That's not Trieste.
For one thing, there's no task or job or whatever that's too below her. She's out there on the lines with her department, serving food with the next person.
What I'm finding to be positives during this whole experience is our partnerships that we've had with our other departments here in the district. For example, I had been working with the warehouse supervisor and his team, and so I had walked in one morning. I just said, hey, I want to tell you guys thank you. I know you've been working very hard and really adjusting how you do things to meet our needs. And they all went around and just talked about how proud they were to be part of this. And one of the last gentlemen that spoke was a younger guy, and he said, I've never had to serve in the military, and if my country asked me to serve, I would do it. And he said he feels like this is his way of serving his community, that we don't know what the risks are, and he's still out there, and he's happy to be out there, and sorry. Just realizing the impact that our team has and how they feel about serving their community has just so proud to be out there and part of this team.
I saw the nomination. It came through my email, from CalPERS. And the very first person I thought of was Trieste.
In a time period where there was high stress and fear, she still dug in and understood her role to be a public servant during a time where there was difficulty.
We're normally the first person that the student sees when they walk on our campuses. They walk into the cafeteria in the mornings and eat breakfast. And my goal is that they're excited about coming in and saying hi to our school lunch hero every morning.
So I think it's always a pleasure to see the spotlight on excellent stories. Just a big congratulations to Trieste. We know that peer recognition is one of the most powerful forms of recognition that you can actually receive. And so that brings me to this year's Our Promise campaign. Remember, our Promise is the annual charitable giving campaign that provides state employees with a chance to allocate charitable donations through payroll deduction. Of course, many of our nonprofit organizations are in great needs of support this year, and the campaign is certain to make quite a bit of difference. So far this year, we only have about 18% of our team members who've stepped up to donate. We'd certainly like to see that number climb a little bit higher. But I'd like to thank Don Martinez and Forrest Grimes for chairing this year's campaign team. It has been difficult to come up with the right types of events when we're trying to do this virtually. So I do appreciate all of their efforts and the unique way that they've had to run the campaign this year. So one final note before I close out with the investment performance. This is the last Board of Administration meeting of the year. The next time we will meet will be January 19th and 20th for our annual board education and stakeholder days, both of which will take place online. So now to the investment performance. As of September 30th of 2020, the fiscal year to date is 4.6, the 1 year is 7.8, the 3 year is 6.9, the 5 year is 8.4, and the 10 year is 8.2. And with that, I'd like to wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving, as well as a very nice holiday season. And that does conclude my report, President Jones.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frost. And Ms. Frost, could you send the campaign, the fundraising information to board members? So some of us may want to also contribute. So if you could do that, okay, thank you. Okay, so now we will move to item 6, action consent items.
Mr. President, can I just make a quick comment?
Sure. Mr. Ruffino.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Treasurer Ma would like to recognize and thank a CalPERS team member. The Treasurer's Office received word from a resident of one of our constituent cities that CalPERS team member Daniel Mueller did an excellent job presenting some very high level and complex information when discussing the components of the actuarial valuation for the city of Upland at a recent well-attended Finance Committee meeting. The Treasurer would like to thank Mr. Mueller for his work on this presentation and the way that he represented every member of the CalPERS board in his interaction with the city of Upland's residents, council members, and staff while explaining the specific detail that make up the city of Upland's retirement funding portrait. So again, thank you to Mr. Mueller for your dedication and commitment to our member. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffino, for that and recognizing our board member and our staff member. We appreciate that. It's good to hear good news about the work that our members are doing in serving our members throughout the state. So thank you very much for that. So now back to the item 6, action consent items. We have 6A, 6B, and 6C. Do I have a motion? I don't. Moved by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Fechner. Mrs. Hopper, we have a motion on that. Mrs. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown. Rob Fechner.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacy Olivares. Irene Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcaba.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty E.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have David Miller making the motion, Rob Fechner seconding it for agenda items 6A, 6B, 6C.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. We now move to item 7 on the agenda. Information consent items. Have not received any requests to remove any of those items from the consent calendar. So we will move on to item 8, committee reports and action. The first item is 8A, the investment committee. For that, I call on the vice chair, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Administration Committee met on November 17th, 2020. The committee recommends, and I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 4B, approve the November 2020 prospective report of solicitations, contracts, purchase orders, and letters of engagement.
Mr. Miller, I think that is finance. This is the investment committee.
Oh, sorry, got the wrong one. Hang on, let me navigate this thing. Oh, there we go. Got the right one now. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
On autopilot here. Okay. The investment committee met via video conference on November 16th, 2020. The committee approved the following. Agenda item 7A, the recommendation to set the discount rate for the long-term care fund to 4.75 with a portfolio risk upper threshold of 9.5% and the inclusion of private assets and leverage as allowable investments within allocation ranges to be approved at a future committee meeting. Agenda item 7B, the recommended changes to the investment committee delegation. Agenda item 9A, to consent to the transfer of the Wilshire Consulting contract to its new ownership entity. The committee received reports on the following topics. An educational review of how CalPERS uses tracking error as part of the investment risk framework. Wilshire Associates annual financial analysis of CalPERS divestments. An update on CalPERS investment strategy on climate risk and opportunity. The annual report on external managers' compliance with the responsible contractor policy. The chair directed staff to include a market and economics update in February 2021 investment committee meeting. Accelerate the presentation of the 5-year divestment review to the committee from November 2021 to March 2021. Gather information to further the understanding of the relationship between Wilshire and the ACA compliance group and how that fits into Wilshire's management of potential conflicts of interest. The committee heard public comment on a labor dispute. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the February 2021 Investment Committee meeting. Discussion on the asset allocation for the long-term care program, an ALM support workshop covering various foundational topics for the upcoming ALM cycle, and a market and economics update. The next meeting of the investment committee is scheduled for February 16th, 2021 in Sacramento, California. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The next item is item
Mr. President?
Yes.
Did you not want to take a roll call vote for those action items?
No, not the investment committee is a committee of the whole. That is not necessary now.
Okay.
It's just a report. Okay, thank you though, Ms. Hopper.
Excuse me, Mr. President, this is Lynn Paquin. I have a question on IC summary.
Okay, Ms. Paquin.
Thank you. My question is, we had given Matt Jacobs and his legal staff direction to pursue further information with Wilshire regarding the conflicts of interest framework that they are developing. And it's not clear when they're going to bring that back. And my question is, instead of waiting for the February investment committee meeting, is it possible to address that during our education session in January, given that we are starting the ALM process in February itself.
Yeah, I see no problem with that. We could ask staff to contact them and see if we can move that, getting that information to an early date. Ms. Frost, can you be sure that they are aware of that request? I think she's on mute. Ms. Frost, can you hear me?
I'm aware.
Mr. Jacobs, can you hear me?
I'm aware of the request.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so now we move to, we have a request coming up from Ms. Brown on IC. Ms. Brown, you have a, no, that's Lynn, okay. Ms. Brown, you have a question on IC summary also?
No, I'm trying to give a heads up for pension and health to separate out the vote, so.
Okay, said IC, okay. I thought, okay, my problem. Okay, let's move to item 8D, Pension and Health Benefits Committee. For that, I call on the chair, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pension Health Benefits Committee, PHBC, met on November 17th. The committee recommends and I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 6A, approve health plan changes for the 2010 year, including new Medicare Advantage and basic plans, service area expansions of existing plans, and new benefits for an existing Medicare Advantage plan.
On a motion of the committee, any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hopper, please.
Yes, Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Lorena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcaba,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Aye.
Lynn Packman for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, for item 6A, approval of the new health plans, benefit designs and service area changes, motion made by Rob Fechner, all ayes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you. Agenda item 6B, approve adoption of the portfolio rating approach for the basic health plan portfolio using the Milliman Advanced Risk Adjusters, MARA, prospective risk scoring tool with a 2-year phase-in. This rating approach includes replacing the current PERS Basic Preferred Provider Organization, PPO plans, with the proposed PERS Platinum and PERS Gold plans. Benefit design changes will be considered next November as part of year 2 of a 2-year phase-in.
Mrs. Brown, are you asking for a comment or you want to just have a separate vote on this?
No, I do have a comment before we vote. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Brett calling on me. Okay, so, I do appreciate all the information staff brought to us, but what I believe we are still missing quite a bit of information on the number of people that are going to be impacted and affected. Quite a few of our members or participants in healthcare need the low-cost healthcare. And especially with this now going to platinum and gold, I don't know what the impact is other than it's going to raise rates substantially. The other issue is that the benefit modifications, we don't know what those are. Those are going to happen in the following year. So we voted for something that's going to increase rates dramatically for a large population of our members, I think. I don't know that for a fact. And we don't know what cuts are going to come to them in terms of their benefits. So we're going to raise their rates. I'm talking about the platinum and gold plans. We're going to raise their rates and we're going to reduce their benefits, and we really don't know what those benefits are that are going to be raised to or reduced to. And so I think it's premature to vote on this. I know we're probably going to move forward, and so I'm just saying why I'm voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
No.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
No.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Donda Wesley,
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, Rob Fechner made the motion for the approval of agenda item 6B, risk mitigation strategies.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. Mr. Fechner, item 6C.
Agenda item 6C, approve recommendation to pursue proposed amendments to existing regulations regarding the minimum standards for CalPERS health benefit plans.
On the motion of the committee, any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris, Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Last vote, Stacy Oliveris.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have the motion made by Rob Fechner. All ayes for approval of agenda item 6C, minimum standards for health benefits.
Ms. Hopper. Agenda item 6D, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you. Agenda item 6D, approve adoption of a rate increase of 52% in year one and 25% in year two for all CalPERS long-term care program policyholders effective July 2021. Authorize recommended benefit design modifications that could be made available to long-term care program policyholders in lieu of a rate increase. If offered, choosing one or more of those benefit design changes would be optional for policyholders.
On the motion of the committee, discussion. Mrs. Brown.
No, I don't have comment. I'm just going to vote no. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, then Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
No.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, Rob Fechner makes the motion. We have one no, made by Margaret Brown for the approval of agenda item 6D, long-term care optional benefit design and premium changes.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you. The chair directed staff to provide the board with specific numbers and locations of members in the PPO plan. Provide the board with an exact timeline for rate increase benefit mitigation options. Was it in advance of the rate increase or at the same time? At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the March PHBC meeting. The committee will receive reports on the PHBC delegation, health open enrollment results, long-term care program, and the retired members' cost of living. The next meeting of the PHBC will be March 17th. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fechner. The next item on the agenda is 8C, Finance and Administration Committee. For that, I call on the Vice Chair, Mr. Miller.
Okay, thank you. I think I've got the right one in front of me here. The Finance and Administration Committee met on November 17th, 2020, and the committee recommends, and I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 4B, approve November 2020 prospective report of solicitations, contracts, purchase orders, and letters of engagement. Agenda item 4C, approve an additional one-year contract term extension for the external investment manager contracts without a defined duration. Agenda item 6A, approve the draft CalPERS 2019 through 2020 basic financial statements. Agenda item 6B, approve a $72.3 million reduction for a total revised 2020 to 2021 budget of $1.621 billion. And agenda item 6C, approve the CalPERS board elections candidate nomination petition options to pursue an emergency regulation to permit non-original signatures during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Brown, you had a note that in one of these items you want to separate for the vote?
Yes, I believe Mr. Miller does as well, the very last one, because we may want to abstain.
Okay, that's 6C then.
Yes.
Okay, so the vote for the members of the board would be on agenda item 4B, 4C, 6A, 6B. So roll call, Mrs. Hopper.
Margaret Brown.
Aye.
Rob Fechner.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris.
Aye.
Irene Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcaba.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, the motion was made by David Miller. This is for the approval of agenda items 4B, 4C, 6A, 6D as in David.
Okay, on mine it says B, okay.
6B.
Okay, B,
Okay, so it should be 6B.
yeah. Okay, all right, so then that item is approved. So now we would vote on agenda item 6C. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown.
Abstain.
Abstain. Rob Fechner.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Frank? Like he's paused.
Oh,
Here he comes.
okay, Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Abstain.
Stacey Oliveris.
Aye.
Irene Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
No.
Ramon Rubalcaba.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
One last time, Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
He was there a minute ago.
Okay, Mr. President, that right now leaves with David Miller making the motion. I have 7 ayes, 1 no made by Jason Perez, 2 abstentions, 1 from Margaret Brown and the other from David Miller.
Okay. Mr. Rufino, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but okay, I think it just worked. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
My vote is aye. Sorry, you got
Okay, your vote for Frank Ruffino is aye.
aye, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller.
The committee received reports on the following topics: annual review of funding levels and risk report. The chair directed staff to provide a breakdown of the investment, personnel, and administrative expenses, research privacy protection, short-term and long-term, for CalPERS board election nomination petitions. The committee heard public comment from the city of Tulsa regarding an outstanding utility issue on a property owned by CalPERS. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the February Finance and Administration Committee meeting. 2021 CalPERS Board of Administration Member at Large Notice of Election, and the annual diversity report. The next meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee is scheduled for February 2021.
Okay, thank you very much.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Okay, we now move to the item 8D, Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee. For that, I call on the chair, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee met on November 18, 2020. The committee received reports on the following topics: 2019-20 fiscal year-end compensation outcomes for statutory positions, financial interest separation requirements for Chief Investment Officer position. The chair directed staff to defer the incentive compensation recommendations for the Chief Investment Officer position to the next board meeting, once the new investment compensation consultant, Global Governance Advisors, is under contract. Provide additional information and research on how financial interest separation requirements for positions within the organization compare to other public funds, as well as potential restrictions relevant to categorization of financial interests. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the February Performance, Compensation, Talent Management Committee meeting. The committee will receive a semi-annual status report on the Chief Executive Officer's incentive plan and review the committee delegation. The committee will receive the incentive compensation recommendations for the Chief Investment Officer position from the board's new compensation consultant, Global Governance Advisors. The next meeting of the Performance, Compensation, Talent Management Committee is scheduled for February 2021. Thank you. That ends my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Fechner. The next item, 8E, Risk and Audit Committee. I call on the chair, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Risk and Audit Committee met on November 12, 2020. The committee recommends, and I move, the board approve the following. Agenda item 6A, Independent Auditors Report, fiscal years 2019 to 2020. Approve the CalPERS Board of Administration's Independent Financial Statement Auditors Report and the accompanying required reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Agenda item 6B, Independent Auditors Management Letter. Approve the CalPERS Board of Administration's Independent Financial Statement Auditors Management Letter for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Agenda item 6C, Independent Financial Statement Auditor Selection. The Risk and Audit Committee approve and recommend to the CalPERS Board of Administration, 1, the finalists selected by the subcommittee of the Risk and Audit Committee as CalPERS Independent Financial Statement Auditor, and 2, approve CalPERS to enter contract negotiations with the approved finalists, and if those negotiations are unsuccessful, approve CalPERS to enter contract negotiations with the next highest scoring finalist. Agenda item 6D, RFP for Parallel Evaluation and Certification Services. Approve the release of an RFP seeking an external firm to provide parallel actuarial evaluation and certification services to the Board of Administration on a quadrennial schedule. Approve the draft services to be provided, minimum qualifications, proposal evaluation process, and proposal evaluation sheet.
On the motion of the committee, any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown?
Aye.
Rob Fechner?
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma?
Aye.
Lisa Middleton?
Aye.
David Miller?
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris?
Aye.
Irena Ortega?
Aye.
Jason Perez?
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcava?
Aye.
Teresa Taylor?
Excused.
Shonda Wesley?
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee?
Aye.
Mr. President, David Miller making the motion for items 6A, 6B, 6C, and 6D, all ayes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hopper. Mr. Miller.
The committee received reports on the following topics: third-party valuation and certification of the 2019 annual valuations of the Judges Retirement System, Judges Retirement System 2, Legislators Retirement System, and the 1959 Survivor Benefit Program, and the Enterprise Risk Management Framework Review. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the February Risk and Audit Committee meeting. The election of the Risk and Audit Committee Chair and Vice Chair, the review of the Risk and Audit Committee delegation, and the mid-year plans for enterprise compliance and enterprise risk management. The next meeting of the Risk and Audit Committee is scheduled for February 2021 in Sacramento, California. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. The next item, 8F, Board Governance Committee. For that report, I call on the Vice Chair, Ms. Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board Governance Committee met on November 18, 2020. The committee discussed whether to change the composition of the Pension and Health Benefits Committee to a committee of the whole. The committee also reviewed and discussed the proposed revision to the board governance policy regarding the reporting of investigations to the board and asked management to bring back revised language that incorporates comments made during the meeting for committee action. The next meeting of the Board Governance Committee is tentatively scheduled for March 16, 2021 in Sacramento, California. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. The next item, action agenda items, 9A, proposed decisions of administrative law judges. We also.
I have a comment on board governance.
Oh, okay, Mrs. Brown, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. First of all, I just want to thank the committee for the great discussion on making the PHBC committee of the whole. I know we are not all in agreement, but I think with the big decisions we've made and we have going forward, I think it could be critical for all of us to participate. And I don't know if this is in board governance, Mr. Jones, or if it's in another committee, but we still haven't fixed the number of meetings for pension and health benefits. We only have one meeting in June when it comes to rate setting, and that is typically not enough time, and we certainly aren't sharing with our stakeholders. And so usually we've got 2 meetings back to back where we come with preliminary and then final numbers. I just think it's critical that we add another meeting, and I don't know when that gets discussed, but I think it's critical. We've also heard that from our stakeholders as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Brown, for your comments. And another board member raised that issue earlier, and I indicated that the stated board meetings are at minimum, that when there's necessary, additional meetings can be added. So if there are items that you believe that needs to be discussed prior to those meetings, I consult with the chair and the CEO of the Health Benefits Committee and for consideration of agendizing additional meetings.
So I think I just did that, but I'll do it again. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just letting you know what that process is. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, now we will move to item 9A, proposed decision of administrative law judges. And before we move into these items, Sharad Shah, our independent board counsel for administrative decisions, is on the phone in case we have to refer any questions to him. And also, I've been asked to have a separate vote on 9A13, the Alex Ray case. So with that, I will call on board member Rob Fechner to go through the recommendations for 9A through 14, excluding 9A13. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the board adopt the proposed decisions at agenda items 9A through 12 and number 14 as the board's own decisions with the minor modifications argued by staff to agenda items 9A 1, 8, 11, and 12.
Okay, moved by Mr. Fechner, second by Mr. Miller. Discussion. Seeing no additional discussion requests. So Mrs. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown?
Aye.
Rob Fechner?
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma?
Aye.
Lisa Middleton?
Aye.
David Miller?
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris?
Aye.
Irene Ortega?
Aye.
Jason Perez?
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava?
Aye.
Teresa Taylor? Shonda Wesley? Shonda Wesley?
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee?
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Rob Fechner making the motion, David Miller seconding it. All ayes for agenda items 9A 1 through 12 and 9A 14, excluding 9A 13.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. So now we'll go to 9A 13, the Alex Ray case. Ms. Wesley.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for not being on camera. The pandemic elementary school has really been a drain on my internet. I wanted to just pull this for comment. I understand that this is based on what looks like a precedential decision from last year in the fall. So while I don't think I'm spitting into the wind, I definitely want to make a point. This one concerned me because I'm concerned about conferring intent in a manner that changes the rules of the game for our retirees. And I think that this does just that. I realize that we took the position that we did. This was prior to me being on the board. But these decisions are felt entirely by the retirees who make decisions to retire based on an understanding of what their allowance will be. And decisions like these turn the tables on them. We are bound to follow the law, but we can't push the law into a place that evaporates liabilities for the system and employers at a great harm to retirees. And this felt a little bit like legal gymnastics to me. Special compensation may include the full monetary value of normal contributions paid to the board by the employer, and those special compensation is part of compensation earnable by a member. So I feel like he is not getting his due for his retirement, and I will be voting no.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wesley. So seeing no additional requests to speak on this item, Mr. Fechner.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that the board adopt the proposed decisions at agenda item 13 as the board's own decision.
Yeah, on motion has been moved by Mr. Fechner. Do I have a second?
Aye. Second.
Okay, second by Ms. Brown. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
No.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
No.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Rob Fechner making the motion, Margaret Brown seconding it. For agenda item 9A13, Alex Ray. I have 9 ayes and 2 noes. Noes were by Jason Perez and Shonda Wesley.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Now we will move to 9B, petition for reconsideration. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the board deny the petition for reconsideration, agenda item 9B1.
Moved by Mr. Fechner, second by Mr. Perez. Discussion, 9C1. Okay, that's next. Okay, Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Abstain.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Rob Fechner making motion, Jason Perez second. I have 10 ayes, 1 abstention from Shonda Wesley for agenda item 9B, petition for reconsideration.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Now we will move to agenda item 9C, state legislative proposal. Mr. Brown.
Hello, Mr. President and board members, Danny Brown, CalPERS team member. I have 3 legislative proposals for you today. This first one is seeking approval to sponsor legislation that would assist the investment office in pursuing private debt investment opportunities. This is the same proposal the board approved in February, and the bill language attached is the final version of the bill that was in print, with the one exception that the bill now only applies to CalPERS. We would welcome CalSTRS and UC Retirement Systems inclusion if they request it. In short, this bill is intended to facilitate bringing private debt investment management in-house by setting up public records disclosure requirements consistent with existing law. The board memo notes how the proposal is modeled after current law, both for external alternative investments and for public banking. Bringing these investments in-house would provide more control over these investments, and we would avoid the fees and costs associated with external management. The disclosures in current law and proposed here provide the appropriate balance for protecting borrowers' information and ensuring transparency for investment teams' decisions and performance. Because this issue has been discussed before, I will stop, and I'm available to answer any questions. And I believe that Gene Hsu is also available if we need some technical questions answered.
Okay, thank you. See no request from board members to speak on this, so I will entertain a motion and second, and then we do have a request from the public to speak on this item. So moved by Mr. Miller. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Fechner. Okay, the motion is made by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Miller. Mrs. Hopper, please. Oh, well, hold on, we have a public request to speak. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President, we have one caller, Mr. David Torres, Retired Public Employees Association of California.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is David Soares. I'm with RPEA. I'm a retired prosecutor. And I just want to indicate that in the item 9C1 private lending bill, we would be able to support that bill with amendments which had actually been proposed previously. We certainly support exploring private debt, and we know that the underwriting process should be kept private, but we believe that the constituent ownership of the borrower, the terms of the loan, and the collateral pledged must remain public information. I think that there was some confusion due to personalities. I know when I got involved in this bill, a strong letter from the Senate Judiciary Committee staff indicated that bills limiting public access to records relating to public funds are limited by policy to personal or proprietary information only. Not knowing the ownership or terms or collateral is rife for conflicts of interest. The discussion before the legislature is going to devolve into a discussion of how the CalPERS board, and particularly the CEO and the board president, have failed to follow well-established law, and particularly the Political Reform Act of 1974. We would much prefer that the board direct staff to work with us to craft a bill that protects proprietary information of potential borrowers disclosed during underwriting and negotiation, but that does not hide the nature of assets held in public trust. We would much prefer to be able to support this bill because we were not able to support it as it was proposed, and it could get ugly again. We'd like to avoid that very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor.
Aye. Lynn Packard for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have David Miller making the motion, Rob Feckner seconding it. I have 9 ayes, 1 no made by Margaret Brown, 1 abstention from Irena Ortega.
Thank you, Mrs. Hopper. Mr. Brown, the next item is optional membership enrollment date.
In this next item, we're seeking approval to sponsor legislation that would specify that the membership enrollment date for optional members is the start date for the appointment if the membership election is received by CalPERS within 90 days of the start date. If the election is received after 90 days, the enrollment date would be the first day of the month in which the election is received by CalPERS. Current law does not provide deadlines for this election, which has allowed confusion with both employers and optional members. As a result, CalPERS team members have unnecessary workload addressing enrollment issues with optional members. Optional members are local elected officials, governor appointees, and legislative employees. This proposal provides a clear timeline to make and process these elections while providing both employers and the optional members the flexibility of a 90-day window. With that, I'll stop and answer any questions that you may have.
I don't see any questions from board members, and so this is an action item. What is the pleasure of the board? The motion?
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Fechner. Second by Mr. Rubalcaba. Further discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown.
Aye.
Rob Fechner.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris.
Aye.
Arena Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcaba.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Rob Fechner making the motion, Ramon Rubalcaba seconding it. For agenda item 9C2, all ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. We now will go to item 9C3, collection of overpayments, deduction from warrants. Mr. Brown.
In this last item, we are seeking approval to sponsor legislation that would allow CalPERS to collect any overpayment made to or on behalf of any member, former member, or beneficiary from any future CalPERS benefit payment that may be payable. When a retiree, there is often an overpayment that must be collected and reconciled with the benefits associated with the individual. When there are ongoing benefit payments, CalPERS is usually able to reconcile the overpayment by withholding that amount from that ongoing payment to a surviving spouse or beneficiary. For lump sum payments, this reconciliation may not always be possible. CalPERS team members are required to try to identify who is the liable party when an overpayment has been made. This proposal gives CalPERS team members the authority to recover overpayments by withholding the owed amount from future benefit payments, which is intended to reduce unnecessary workload and reduce uncollected overpayments. The authority is modeled after a CalSTRS law enacted in 1976. And that ends my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, seeing no questions from the board members. It's been moved in second. No, we need a motion.
I have a question.
Ms. Brown?
Yes. Mr. Brown, how many, how often does this come up in a year? Do you know how many times or how many times this comes up?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I know that there was about $550,000 in uncollected debt in 18 and 19, and about a little over 400,000 in the prior fiscal year. I don't know. I can get that number of how often it comes up, but again, it typically only comes up when either the member dies and they don't have they're not leaving in a continuing benefit to a surviving spouse, or maybe the surviving spouse dies, and so there's a lump sum death benefit being paid out. So it doesn't happen. I would have to get those numbers to you, but I could.
So my question is, so we would take the overpayment from the future ongoing payments. My concern is like, what if the overpayment wasn't made to the surviving spouse and then we're going to take it from the surviving spouse? I mean, that's my concern, that we're not penalizing a different party that didn't receive the overpayment there. Do you think that's what we're not doing?
No, I think, well, in the sense of if there is a ongoing payment, so for example, the member dies and the spouse is now going to get a continuing benefit, they would just offset this payment against that continuing benefit. If there's a death and there's no continuing benefit, and maybe the only thing that's going to be paid out is a lump sum death benefit or remaining balance, they're going to deduct it from that balance. And you're correct. We try to determine that whoever got these overpayments is, we try to determine who the liable party is and try to collect from that liable party. But in what this bill allows us to do, or clarify that we can do, is that we don't necessarily have to match up the liability. We can just go ahead and offset it against that ongoing payment.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the old IRS rule when they would go after the separated spouse with children because the deadbeat ex-husband wasn't paying, you know, or wasn't filing his taxes. And the IRS put a stop to that. So I don't want us chasing the wrong party for the repayment, but you know, maybe the rest of us don't feel the same way. But that would be my concern, and I would hope that we could find that out, that we wouldn't be doing that. This could be something where maybe you know, the new wife got the overpayment, and now the first wife is getting the pension, and you know, you're going to be debiting from one when they didn't get the overpayment. That's my only concern.
I don't know if Anthony's on the line and wants to jump in, but I think it's more of a situation where it's not so much the spouses. I think it's maybe child 1 and child 2, or, you know, it might be the children that one child has access to the member's bank account, where another child might be getting you know, the lump sum death benefit. So I think it's more of that than spouses, but I would have, if Anthony's available, maybe he can,
I see him. Okay.
Help me.
Yeah, thank you, Danny and Ms. Brown. Anthony Sweeney, CalPERS team member. Yeah, Danny's exactly right. Ongoing benefits are always collected to pay off overpayments. So if there were ongoing benefits, and this is just to clarify other type of lump sum benefits that maybe they could be payable. We're not aware of who took the overpayment after the date of death, or the payment after the date of death that created the overpayment, and we would apply these lump sum death benefits to offset that overpayment. So we're always making the fund whole before paying any additional benefits. If the ex-spouse had a separate payment stream, they would not be liable for the overpayment to the member.
Is the typical overpayment because we don't get the date of death right away and we keep making like retirement payments and then, okay. Is that correct?
That's correct. In most cases, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fechner?
Yes, thank you. Don't run off, Mr. Sweeney. I assume this may be for you as well. Given the scenario that you just put out there, if there's an overpayment to a member and something happens, but they have a community property settlement, do we then collect that overpayment back from both parties?
If there was I have to think that through a bit, Mr. Fechner. If there's a community property settlement, the ex-spouse is getting paid independently from the member. So we're just collecting from the members on the member's overpayment. So we wouldn't hold the ex-spouse liable.
But if the member is then theirs is reduced, we're not reducing the spouses, ex-spouses?
It depends. If there was a erroneous payment, right? If the payment being paid was erroneous, we would reduce, again, both of those. But in the case of a debt, we wouldn't reduce the ex-spouse's ongoing benefits for that particular case.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. Are there any statute of limitations in terms of time that you can go back and recoup overpayments?
On death benefits, it's 10 years, Mr. Jones.
And what about other kinds of benefits?
There are statute of limitations for the member that are up to 3 years, or anything over 3 years are non-collectible.
Okay.
But the death benefits are a different situation.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this is a action item.
I'll move approval.
Moved by Ms. Brown. Need a second. Second by Mr. Fackler. Okay, so Ms. Hopper.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rod Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Margaret Brown making the motion, Rob Fechner second it. I have 11 ayes for agenda item 9C3.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Now we move to item 9D, approval of committee delegations. Mr. Jacobs.
Yes, good afternoon again, board members. This agenda item brings together for board approval all of the 2020 revisions to the various committee delegations. Those obviously were revisions that have been approved by the respective committees. They're all fairly minor. The revisions essentially clean up some of the more archaic and unnecessary language in the delegations to make them more readable. There are also a few other relatively minor revisions that are outlined in the agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. So this is item 9D. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Fechner, second by Mr. Miller. Questions or comments? Mrs. Brown. No, I'm sorry. Ms. Brown.
Mr. Perez is in front of me.
He's asking for 10D.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think, is that correct, Mr. Perez?
No, I want a question, but I defer ladies first.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs, I just want to confirm, because there's a lot here, that none of this reduces our oversight roles from the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Perez.
Matt, along the same question, everything that I know we had discussions a little bit over everyone, but there's no changes to those documents when we discussed them.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So this is an action item. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rod Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, Rod Fechner making the motion, David Miller seconded for items 9D. All ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. We now will move to information agenda items. 10A, Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon again, Mr. President and board members. Danny Brown, CalPERS team member. This item is the state and federal legislative update. On the state side, since our September board meeting, the governor has signed or vetoed all the legislation sent to his desk this year, which included two more of the bills that you supported. First, AB 2101, our annual housekeeping bill, was signed. The final bill language is in attachment 2, and you will see that the legislative committees decided to include housekeeping provisions for CalSTRS and the 37 Act county systems in the bill. And second, AB 2967 by Assemblymember O'Donnell was signed. This bill prohibits future exclusions through the CalPERS contract amendment process. Moving to the election, the results are largely settled, and the state legislature partisan makeup has only small changes. In the state Senate, 2 Republican incumbents have been defeated, so the Democratic majority will be 31 members out of 40 seats. In the state assembly, the Republicans have picked up 1 seat, leaving the breakdown 60 Democrats, 19 Republicans, and 1 no party preference. So as you can see, both in the Senate and in the assembly, the Democrats have a supermajority. Both houses reconvene and start the 2021-22 session on December 7th. We are still waiting to see what the session calendar will look like in 2021 and how the legislature will manage its workload. And once the committee makeups have been announced, we will begin our outreach. Moving to the federal update and starting with the election, and I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you probably don't already know, but Joe Biden has been declared the winner and next president of the United States. And even though President Trump continues to dispute the results, we are not expecting the outcome to change. The Democrats have also held on to the House, but their majority could shrink by as many as 10 seats, if not more. This will give the House Democrats the smallest majority since 1919. The control of the Senate is pending a runoff in January for both seats in Georgia. The Democrats must win both seats to take control of the Senate with a 50-50 split. Most pundits think the Republicans will be able to hold on to at least 1 seat, giving them a slim margin of 51-49, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. The lame duck session has also started in Congress, and despite hopeful talk on both sides of the aisle, the odds are not favorable that congressional leaders will be able to reach an agreement on COVID-19 relief package or a full-year omnibus appropriations bill before the end of session. The federal government is currently funded through December 11th, so the thought is Congress will pass another short-term continuing resolution to get them past the inauguration. And the question is whether they can include some kind of very limited bipartisan COVID-19 aid in that bill. As for the bigger stimulus package, and although Senate Majority Leader McConnell has entered the negotiations, the sides are still far apart, with Democrats holding firm to the request for $2 trillion+ in relief, while Senator McConnell and the Senate Republicans are still around $500 billion. Some think that the runoff in Georgia will give them enough incentive to reach an agreement because no one wants to be blamed for not providing COVID relief when that race takes place in January. The other thing we'll be watching and engaging on during this lame duck session is the slim chance that legislation dealing with balance billing or prescription drug costs can be included in any of this last-minute legislation. While it is a long shot, Senator Lamar Alexander, the chair of the Help Committee, is retiring at the end of the year, and Senator Grassley must give up his chairmanship of the Senate Finance Committee due to internal rules, regardless of who controls the Senate. Both senators have been committed to reaching bipartisan agreements, and many think that they're going to work hard to try to get something done before their tenure is up. Of course, now with Senator Grassley testing positive for COVID, I'm not sure, it probably makes the chances even less that something's going to happen in that area. Finally, I will end by saying we have started the process of developing our federal priorities for next year and plan to cover those with you in February. Obviously, we'll need to consider the outcome of the Senate race in Georgia, as well as the key appointments made by President-elect Biden. We will continue to look to increase our activity on federal healthcare policy. And as Don mentioned yesterday, Marta Green was recently added to the board of the Public Sector Healthcare Roundtable, which is a step in that direction and will improve our access to federal policymakers. We're also recently released an RFP for a federal lobbying spring-fed pool that can be used to focus on specific healthcare issues as needed. And with that, I'll end my presentation and happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, I see no questions, Mr. Brown, from the board members. Are you raising your hand, Ms. Ortega? Okay. I do have one question, Mr. Brown. I heard this morning earlier that I think it's 32 members of Congress have now tested positive. Can they vote remotely, or do they have to be present in the chambers?
I think it depends on. I think it depends if it's a committee or a floor vote. But I believe on the Senate floor they need to be present. In fact, that was Senator Grassley missed a vote, I believe, on Tuesday, and it's the first time he's missed a vote in I don't know how many years, and so he's been like the longest standing senator to not miss a vote, and he missed one. So I believe that they do participate remotely in certain committee hearings, but I believe on the floor they have to be present.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we move to, thank you, Mr. Brown, for the report. We move now to 10B, options for retaining fiduciary counsel. Mr. Jacobs. Can't hear you, Matt.
All right, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, this agenda item presents the board with options for selecting and utilizing fiduciary counsel. As you know, our current model, and one that we've been using for several cycles now for the selection of fiduciary counsel, is to have a single primary fiduciary counsel. In addition, of course, on occasion, we have called on specialized fiduciary counsel to address a specific fiduciary issues when such expertise has been needed. The current incumbent, Nosman, the team headed by Ms. Dunning, is under contract through March of 2022. And so in the absence of any changes, we would typically commence a solicitation to see who else might be interested in that engagement in the fall of 2021. So there are benefits to sticking with that model, and they're outlined in the agenda item, but in short, it would be kind of continuity of the same counsel, and there's a certain efficiency involved there as far as the incumbent having full knowledge of all the fiduciary issues that the board has been confronting, and that can be useful as a background and a basis as new fiduciary issues arise, and there's a potential cost savings. There are disadvantages to sticking with that model, which are essentially less flexibility as far as choosing counsel for particular fiduciary issues. And there is a conflict potential if you come up with, if Nosman were to have a conflict with respect to a particular issue, it would be more difficult to obtain fiduciary counsel on an expedited basis. It's not impossible, to be sure. There are options if you wanted to change this model. The second option that's listed in the agenda item is to do a new solicitation now, as opposed to waiting until the fall of 2021. The basic difference between what we have now, which is continuing the Nosman contract through its expiration, would be that it would allow the board to kind of test the waters to see what other options may be out there now. A disadvantage is that the cost could be greater, and there would be a certain ramp-up time for a new fiduciary counsel. A third option, excuse me, also outlined in the agenda item, would be to do a new solicitation and select multiple firms. And this is what STRS has gone to this year. STRS actually selected 4 different fiduciary counsels with respect to different areas of fiduciary counsel, or fiduciary advice. A primary advantage of this is it gives CalPERS, both the board and the legal office, more immediate access to multiple firms. The disadvantage is, or a disadvantage is cost. Another disadvantage is multiple firms ramp up time and potential, at least theoretic, inefficiencies from no single firm being aware of all the fiduciary issues confronting CalPERS and the history of those issues, and also a certain lack of continuity. And then option 4 is to select a primary fiduciary counsel and then a single backup. And that has a mix of some of the advantages and disadvantages that I've already described, albeit to a lesser degree. And then I'm sure that there are variations of each of these that could also be adopted. So that's really where we are and what the options are for the board. Management is agnostic as to which of these we should go with. We can make any of them work, and they all have their strong points and less strong points. And so with that, Mr. President, I will kick it back to you for the board to discuss.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have a comment and a question. The comment is I'm very much in favor of new solicitation. We've had some discussions before where we've come up about strengths and shortcomings of our current status quo. But my question, because I would lean toward number 4, having a primary fiduciary and a backup for circumstances where we might need it. But I guess my question is, having not been here all that long, is how often or have we needed to get specialist fiduciary counsel for specific issues in the past that would lead us to think maybe we need multiples, or has that not really been an issue with us?
Mr. Miller, I don't think it's been a huge issue. We've done it on a couple of investment matters that you know about. We've done that recently. And we did that on a board, an issue that arose with respect to the responsible contractor responsible contractor policy, probably at least 2 years ago. We really haven't had an issue retaining the expertise. We have quite a few firms that we are under contract with for a wide variety of matters, not just fiduciary matters. So we tend to be able to find the type of expertise that we need within those firms, even though they may not be engaged with us specifically to provide fiduciary counsel. So it's not a big issue, and we have been able, and we've done it probably putting aside the investment issue this year, maybe on average once a year.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. So I still feel number 4 to me seems the option that I would be most enthusiastic about. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Perez.
Thank you. I like option 3 because I have had questions to our current, and she's made comments that she's not the expert in that specific area, and I think the board and our members deserve the experts for a specific area. So for that reason, I like option 3.
Okay, Ms. Paquin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our office is also in favor of option 3. As Mr. Jacobs mentioned during his opening remarks, CalPERS has already gone to this model, and it's been very effective so far. As we all know, it takes a long time to put RFPs together and go through and solicit and interview the firms, make a selection. And it's nice to know that there are multiple firms with different strengths and expertise in the pool. Doesn't mean that we're paying them to be in the pool, but if we do need to call upon their expertise, then we can engage them in whatever project we're interested in very quickly. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Jacobs, if we were to go with option one, that doesn't prevent us from bringing in additional fiduciary counsel as needed, such as opining on a significant investment transaction, et cetera. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Jones.
And so then there's no, and it's almost like a spring-fed pool if we continue with just the first one fiduciary counsel and then go to the pool when we need to?
Well, it's not quite the same, but it's not grossly different. You know, if you regard all of our counsel for our various areas, so for example, we've got, gosh, probably 6, 8 different firms under, maybe more than that, for various transactional matters. They tend to have some of this expertise, this specialized expertise that we need. So we can call on them if they're willing to provide us that kind of specialized expertise, as we did recently with Pillsbury, without getting into a whole new contract. The idea of a spring-fed pool is more that you have multiple firms that are specifically in a fiduciarily kind of designated pool. So it's I don't know if that helps, but I mean, to get to more to Ms. Paquin, I think Ms. Paquin is thinking of more of a model where we've actually got a few firms that have this specific fiduciary expertise that would be in this pool that we would draw from, as opposed to having 1 or 2 firms and then kind of reaching out to a pool that is perhaps less specialized to get, on a more ad hoc basis.
Okay. And so I like the continuity of option one with perhaps a backup or having pre-qualified additional fiduciary counsel to access when necessary, as opposed to going to 4 different fiduciary counsels. And as you said, that would eliminate some of the continuity. And when we hire a fiduciary firm, we're hiring the firm, so they have additional expertise, I'm sure, that they could bring to the table, as opposed to having to go out and hire someone on a specific issue. So that's my comment. Who's next here? I think Mr. Perez, you still have a question?
There's no questions before me, I think, but I'm prepared to motion that we go with option 3.
Okay, so we have it's a motion. It's is there a second for?
I second.
Say it's Mr. Perez move a motion for 3 and a second by Ms. Oliveras. Discussion. Ms. Milton.
Thank you. A couple of questions. One, a procedural question. This came to us as an information item. If we take and make a motion and have a vote on that, we are moving from information to action item. Is that something we're permitted to do?
It is something we're permitted to do. I know that some of the stakeholders don't like it, but legally it is something we're permitted to do. We do notice that in our notice that goes out that information items can be transformed into action items.
All right, thank you. Second question is more substantive to the discussion here. Mr. Jacobs, have you had any difficulty under the current model in being able to identify the need for and then obtain counsel in any fiduciary area where we've needed expertise?
No.
All right, so I'm not opposed necessarily to making change, but it seems that we are moving quickly into this, and I question whether or not a more thorough review of what we need in the way of fiduciary counsel, and doing so consistent with the process that we have coming up, where we will be going out to RFP in the fall of 21 would be more appropriate. But I'm open after hearing from my colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Milton. Ms. Oliveris.
Thank you. I am in support of option 3. However, I also concur with Ms. Middleton's remarks. As we go forward with selecting a CIO and setting a new conflict of interest policy, I think it's critical that we have a fiduciary that has extensive experience in dealing with institutional investors and has deep institutional investment knowledge. Thank you.
Lynn Pat-Gwynn.
Thank you. So I appreciate, Mr. Jacobs, the fact that CalPERS has a lot of different councils that we work with and under contract, but I do seem to recall that when we were hiring with Pillsbury, which we think that they've done a great job so far, it took a long time. And I think I remember it was at least 6 months, but please correct me if I'm wrong. And I think the concept behind option 3 is to have firms with different expertise, so that if we wanted to talk to them about different investment models, talk to them about compliance issues, whatever it is, we would have access to them right away without having to go through an extended period of time for the search process. So we are definitely in favor of option 3.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I had a question and a comment. My question, I guess, to Mr. Jacobs. Option 3 wouldn't preclude our current fiduciary counsel from being in that pool or competing to be in that pool in any way, would it?
No, it would not. That is correct.
No, and so my comment is I'm finding myself persuaded by the information and what Ms. Paquin and Mr. Perez have shared with us, and so I'm very much leaning toward number 3. I really think a good timing to get a new solicitation going, and in knowing all the challenges and all the decisions we have coming up, I think we would benefit from that.
Okay, any other comments or questions on that? We do have a motion on the floor. And so seeing no additional questions or comments on the motion by Mr. Perez. And
really, I mean, Mr. Jones, if I might interject, I'm sorry. This can really be done without a motion. It can just be board direction, board president direction, but it can also be done by motion.
Okay, well, we'll let it be the board direction to go ahead and pursue the process for. Rob, you have a question, Mr. Fechner? Okay. Pursue the president's.
Does the maker of the motion need to withdraw it?
Yeah. Mr. Perez, are you want to still have this as a motion, or are you okay with direction?
I think a motion would be good. That way, there's no questions. There's no. We're kind of putting Matt on the box to where he has to keep it.
Okay, let's call for the vote. Any other comments by Mr. Jacobs on that?
No, sir.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. It was moved by Mr. Perez and second by, who was it? Who seconded that motion?
I did.
Okay, Ms. Oliveris, thank you. Okay, so,
So, Mr. President,
yes.
I got a point of clarification. So the motion, does this, I'm trying to understand that, is the motion states that this needs to be executed tomorrow, right away, rather than waiting until we prepare to go out for an RFP? I did not, the motion implies there is an urgency of some sort, and I'm just trying to understand, am I correct in that or not?
Well, if I might comment on that, I think the way I'm understanding it is that we will just proceed to get the solicitation out there in the normal course. That would probably be probably take a couple weeks to get it out on the street, and we'll just proceed apace. Is that sufficient?
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to understand,
Okay, thank you. And then can I ask the maker of the motion in second is if there's any interest in waiting till that 21st period is upon us?
I don't want to wait that long. I appreciate you asking. I don't want to wait that long.
Okay.
But there's no urgency either. It's just regular business.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Oliveris.
Thank you. I actually think that it is important that we do this soon, given that we are going to onboard a CIO, hopefully at the beginning of the year. And then again, look at our conflict of interest policies, particularly as it regards to personal investment holdings.
Okay, so the call for the vote. Mrs. Hopper, please. On the motion by Mr. Perez, second by Ms. Oliveris of option 3.
Margaret Brown.
Aye.
Rob Fechner.
Rob, you.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Mott.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris.
Aye.
Irene Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcaba.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Excused.
Shonda Wesley.
Aye.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have the motion made by Jason Perez, Stacey Oliveris seconding for item 10B on option 3.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hopper. Now we will move to item 10C, summary of board direction. Ms. Frost.
President Jones, I noted one, and that was to provide the board with the Our Promise campaign materials.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it too. So now we would move to public comment. And I got a request to from the public comment is on one of the items, 9813, the Alex Ray. But before we call on that person, I think there's a legal issue. So I'm going to ask Mr. Jacobs or Mr. Sharad Shah to comment on that before we call on the speaker. Mr. Jacobs?
Sure, I'm happy to comment, but I think if Mr. Shaw is still on as your independent independent counsel on OAH matters, you might want to comment first.
Are you still on, Mr. Sharad Shah?
Sharad Shah did not come back online. He was having some issues earlier, and I don't see him.
Okay. Well, here's the problem. Is public comment is not authorized under the Administrative Procedure Act on OAH matters. And of course, the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, is the law under which we proceed in these administrative adjudication matters. And as as a consequence of that provision or that lack of authorization in the APA, the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act specifically exempts OAH matters from the requirement that there be an opportunity for public comment. So we have historically followed that and not permitted public comment on pending OAH matters.
Okay, I think that
the basic idea being, I mean, that these are adjudications that are supposed to be decided on the basis of the administrative record themselves that have been developed, and not to have third parties or even lawyers come in outside of that specific process to try to sway a decision on such a matter.
Okay. Okay, I think we will, Miss Wesley. No, Miss Wesley.
Just a point of clarification, didn't we already vote on it?
Yes, we did.
So I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a good point, Ms. Wesley, and I originally gave bad advice on this because I thought, hey, once you vote on it, it's done, so what's the big deal? But then I remembered that this could very well come back. It's not final until the petition for the opportunity for a petition for review has expired, and many of these things do come back to the board on a petition for review. And so it's really not final, even though you did already vote on it.
That seems flexible, but thanks.
Okay.
Sure.
Ms. Melton?
I had exactly the same question that Ms. Wesley had.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further comments or questions from the board, we will take legal advice on that and ask whether or not there are any additional public comments or requests to speak. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a total of 5 callers. The first of which will be Neil Johnson, SCIU Local 1000.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Actually, I am no longer with Local 1000. I am as of the end of May, I am a retiree in the system. After 45 plus years as an employee of the state of California, having gone back to when Ronald Reagan was governor. Anyway, what I was calling about was to congratulate Eric Baggeson on his retirement. Eric and I've known Eric since back in the Joe Deere era, probably 2010, and ALM process, and then through the years and been able to talk with Eric, found him very knowledgeable, very helpful, willing to discuss things. I don't always agree with him, but anyway, one of the things he and I used to talk about was getting to retirement and working on our old sports cars, him a Corvette, which I think he sold, and I have 2 old Lotuses that I may be now getting too old to really fix and repair, but that was always my dream, and I just wanted to thank Eric for his helpfulness during the last decade and wish him well in retirement. The other thing I would like to comment on, this came up in Ms. Brown's comments about the overpayments, was and it's something I fought with the IRS about. The innocent spouse isn't always the wife or the female. It can be the male. And, I go through that with my ex-wife, who, among other things, had retired a number of years ago, and didn't bother to tell PERS that she had gotten divorced, and that consequently I wasn't a beneficiary. And it wasn't until I tried to file for retirement, and it took a good month to deal with finding the divorce decree and submitting it and getting things through. But anyway, I'm retired, and anyway, just wanted to thank Eric for his help and wish him well in retirement. And thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and congratulations to you on your retirement, Mr. Johnson.
You're welcome, Henry.
Okay. Mr. Fox?
Yes, Mr. President. The next caller is Donna Snodgrass from RPEA.
And congratulations. Good afternoon, board members, and congratulations, Neil. That's good news. I just have a few comments. I'm speaking as an RPEA member and president of Chapter 47 in Yucaipa Valley. Last September, there was a board item 9C1 that was brought asking to set a precedent regarding retired annuitant rules and policy. It appears the issue or the item has been pulled from consideration, and that was a good decision. I still feel that I need to comment on the part of the case that I was going to anyway, and that includes the 960-hour rule. I'm not arguing the case, that's been done, but there is, however, an error in the amount of time to be repaid. And I'm not speaking specifically for this case, please excuse me. I have personally assisted members with multiple appeals for members who received the letters of this 960-hour violation. During the conversations with CalPERS staff, thankfully they agreed that the rule was applied incorrectly, and this resulted in a massive reduction of the amount that was owed by the members. It didn't excuse the amount owed, we didn't argue that. I'll give you two examples, and I'm changing some dates and dollar amounts, and I'll explain why later. One amount was in excess of $300,000, and another amount was approximately $250,000. These were reduced to $9,800 and $9,300 respectively after looking at this rule. The 960-hour rule says the reinstatement period is for the period of violation, and the 960 hours is based on a fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. However, the reinstatement periods in those letters had been in every case based on a calendar year. And I'll give you an example of member A was reinstated January 1st through December 31st of 2014. The repayment amount included the whole year allowances plus all interest and earnings that was compounded for 5 years. The period of violation happened in April of 2014 and should have ended June 30th of that year. So only April, May, and June should have been the violation. Because July 1st started the clock all over again, and they weren't in violation until April. So I'm asking now if the board, because it looks like this is a little more widespread, please have all of these audited cases reviewed for the error in the 960-hour rule. I can tell you that the members I'm speaking on behalf of are so frightened of CalPERS now that they wouldn't let me use their case, the exact examples or their names, and they hate receiving any mail from CalPERS with the logo on it because they don't know what to expect and they don't even want to open it. So thank you for considering this, and I'm available for more details at any time from the staff to answer any more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President, we have the next caller, Mr. J.J. Zelensik, I think representing RPEA.
This is J.J. Jelensik, and I'm not representing RPA. I'm speaking for myself as a beneficiary. And I want to apologize to the board, and especially Mr. Fechner. I should not have assumed that when you met in closed session in April and June to discuss the long-term care strategy, that you got any information about the plans to adjust the premiums or the benefit structure.
let alone learned anything. I should not have assumed that last month's Health Pension Benefit Closed Committee meeting about health plan rate strategy provides you any information about risk mitigation. I should not have assumed that this week's closed investment committee meeting on long-term care asset allocation provided any information. Since the system's policies and procedures related to the review of Form 700, the detection of errors, and dealing with conflicts of interest are secret as client attorney privileged, why should I not suspect that the board is being less than fully transparent? When the board approved the annual audit plan for the Office of Audit Services, it directed that internal audits be reported to the Risk and Audit Committee in closed session. 11 internal audits were completed, but I noticed that none of them were reported to the committee. This lack of review must somehow help the board's oversight function, even if I don't see it. I guess this is just another example of why I should believe that the board's focus is on the members' transparency and oversight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President. The next caller is Dylan Gibbons with the California Special Districts Association.
Hello. Hello, Chair and members of the board. Dylan Gibbons with the California Special Districts Association. Just calling in reference to a couple of comments that were made regarding taking action on information items. As Mr. Jacobs stated, a number of stakeholders don't appreciate it. I'm one of them. My association is one of them, particularly in the format that board meetings are now taking place. These remote meetings, to call in takes time. I got to hear that action is being taken on what was not supposed to be an action item. That is, yes, footnoted that anything can become one. Dial in the 800 number, leave my name, the agenda item that I want to talk on, then wait for an operator to get on, confirm all of that information, and then contact whoever else is on, assume it's Mr. Fox contacting Mr. Jones that want to speak on an item. While this is all happening, I'm having these conversations trying to get through the phone line. The board is continuing to take action, have discussion on these items. So again, particularly while we're in this pandemic setting and we're doing these remote distance meetings, taking action on information items, I believe, flies in the face of the transparency efforts that this board is consistently trying to undertake and that we consistently support. So again, I would urge you to, wherever possible, please avoid taking action on information items. If you think you want to take action on a potential information item, have it changed on the agenda. With that, thank you very much for your time. Today's action item, informational item being taken action on was not of a significant concern of mine, more just the issue of information items being turned to action items. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gibbons. And I think also Mr. Jacobs did also echo that concern, and I could share with you that I will be asking our board members to be more considerate of those kinds of action going forward so that the public will have an opportunity to opine or make comments on these items as we go forward. So it's a legitimate concern. So thank you. Next, Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President. The last caller, Christy Bauma, California Professional Firefighters.
Good afternoon, members. Christy Bauma on behalf of the California Professional Firefighters. I thank you for the opportunity to make public comment and for your work always and over the last several days. The board is fully aware that the CPF has been very active in the legislature trying to protect against adverse actions that harm retirees after the fact that they've made the decision to retire. So I just wanted to make a comment about our concern about the ongoing practice of taking great liberties to try and eliminate compensation items after the fact. Maybe sometimes they're disfavored, but either way that effectively punishes retirees and provides a windfall to employers and systems. The firefighters recognize the overall goal that we all share to have a strong funded status of the system and to have a sustainable system to the benefit of employers and all members of the system. But this is not the way we achieve it, by making determinations after the fact. So we've just asked you to be very mindful of that as you address these issues going forward, whether in your legal department or in your policy decisions. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Fox.
Mr. President, that concludes public comment for this Board of Administration meeting.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And that will conclude our open session meeting. And we're going to take a lunch break, short lunch break. Before I need to indicate that we will adjourn into closed session for items 1 to 3 from the closed session agenda. This will include the following litigation matters, weddings, Exol v. CalPERS. We will also receive the General Counsel's update on pending litigation. So at this time, the board members will exit this open session meeting and connect to the closed session meeting. To the members of the public watching on live stream, this concludes our open session meetings for November. Thank you for joining us, and we will reconvene our closed session meeting at 2:15.